This is a story about betrayal, not the kind wrapped in scandal or whispered in dark corners, but the quiet kind. The kind that breaks you without raising its voice. My name is Edward Stodd, and what I'm about to tell you isn't easy. It's not loud or dramatic, but it's real, and it's mine. This is the story of how my marriage ended, not with infidelity, but with something colder, a choice made without me. It started on a Saturday, like any other. The sky was soft with early spring light, the air thick with that damp warmth before the flowers come in. I was sipping coffee at the kitchen table, reading the news on my phone when Cameron walked in. She had that look, chin slightly raised, eyes a touch too bright. I knew it before she even opened her mouth. Something was coming. I said yes, she said. No hello, no warm-up. Just that. I looked up. Yes to what? To being a surrogate. For Cindy and Duke. I blinked. The words didn't land right at first. Like hearing the punchline without the joke. You what? It's my body, she added quickly, her voice already defensive. And I've made my choice. That was it. No discussion. No late-night talk. No laying in bed, wondering what it might mean for us. Just a single decision that cracked the foundation of everything we built. Cindy was her twin sister. I knew they were close. I knew she struggled with fertility. Rounds of IVF, miscarriages, the heartbreak that seeped into every corner of their home. But I never thought Cameron would offer up her body, our lives, without even asking if I was ready to go along for the ride. I sat there, staring at her like I was trying to find the version of her I married. The woman who used to laugh at my terrible jokes, who'd lean into me when the world got too loud. But she was gone, replaced by someone who could make a life-altering decision and deliver it like a grocery list item. I understand why, I said eventually, voice low. But I don't understand how you did it without me. She shrugged. Because it's not about you, Edward. It's about Cindy. It's about what's right. No, it was about control. About removing me from the equation because she knew what I'd say. Because I wasn't supposed to matter in this version of her hero story. I stood up, pushed my chair back slow, and left the kitchen. My coffee still steamed on the table. The silence behind me felt colder than the March wind outside. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I curled up on a couch, blanket pulled tight, the TV humming some late-night show I didn't watch. And I thought about all the moments that should have been ours, the decisions, the fears, the long talks, and how she'd erased me from them. Not with cruelty, but with indifference. That was the moment I knew. Something had ended. Not loudly, not with fire, but with silence. And that silence, somehow, was louder than any scream could have been. The days after her announcement didn't pass. They dragged. Like walking through mud with weights on my ankles. Cameron moved around the house like nothing had changed, humming while she folded laundry, laughing too loudly on the phone with Cindy, the air around her practically humming with self-satisfaction. She'd made a decision that would reroute our entire lives and acted like it was just another Tuesday. I tried to keep to myself at first. I thought maybe she'd realize that there'd be some kind of moment where she'd say, I should have talked to you. I know this affects you too. But that moment never came. Instead, she doubled down. She printed out schedules from the fertility clinic, made color-coded binders, ordered prenatal vitamins in bulk. She was radiant, glowing with purpose, and I was background noise, just the guy who shared her mortgage. She didn't ask how I felt. She didn't even pretend to care. I became a roommate in my own marriage, orbiting a woman I barely recognized. One evening, I found her sitting at the kitchen table with Duke and Cindy, maps of hormone timelines spread out between them like war plans. They were drinking wine, well, not Cameron, and laughing like this was a family reunion, not a quiet mutiny. I stood there in the doorway for a good 10 seconds before anyone even noticed me. Hey, Cameron said, barely glancing up. We're just going over some of the next steps. Yeah, I replied. I see that. Cindy had the decency to look embarrassed. Duke didn't. He grinned like we were best buddies planning a barbecue. And Cameron, she didn't flinch. Just kept on talking about progesterone shots and implantation windows like this was her job now. That night, after they left, I asked her one more time, calmly, carefully, why didn't you talk to me first? She didn't hesitate. Because I didn't need to. I wanted to do it, and I did. You're not my owner, Edward. It's not your place to decide what I do with my body. I stood there, stunned. It wasn't about ownership. It was about partnership. About a marriage where life-altering choices are made together. I didn't want control. I wanted respect. And in that moment, I realized I didn't have it, hadn't had it for a while. The next morning, I made an appointment with a lawyer. I wasn't angry, not in the way people think. It was colder than that, like someone had unplugged a lamp that used to light up the whole room. I didn't tell her right away. I just started sleeping on the couch more often, staying late at work, taking long walks after dinner. I needed distance, even if I had to fake it under the same roof. 8 months. That's what the lawyer told me. Minimum waiting period before a divorce could be finalized in our state, unless there was abuse or abandonment. 8 months of living with a woman who chose her sister over her husband. 8 months of watching her belly grow with a child that wasn't mine, hearing her talk about our little miracle like I was supposed to clap and smile. No, I didn't cheer. I didn't help. I didn't lean in. If it wasn't my choice, it wasn't my responsibility. I didn't say those words out loud yet, but I would. Soon. Living with someone who's betrayed you in silence is like watching a stranger move through your home wearing your memories like old clothes. Cameron and I shared a space, but that's all it was, space. She floated through the rooms with her prenatal books and kale smoothies, her maternity pillow and glowing skin, like this was the happiest chapter of her life. And maybe it was, but I was just background noise. The man she used to call her husband, now reduced to a roommate with a short fuse and a longer shadow. We developed a routine, a cold, sterile choreography. I made coffee in the morning. She took hers after I'd left the kitchen. We rarely ate at the same time. Conversations were reduced to logistics, bills, the weather, the occasional reminder about trash day. She tried to tell me about the baby sometimes, what size it was now, how many kicks she felt, and I just nod or leave the room. I wasn't cruel. I didn't throw things or raise my voice. I just removed myself, inch by inch, moment by moment. I didn't go to doctor's appointments. I didn't ask about her scans. I didn't help when the back pain started or when she cried in the middle of the night. I heard her sometimes, muffled sobs behind the bathroom door, but I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for it to stop. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was preservation, the only way I knew how to keep my sanity in a house that no longer felt like mine. Friends asked if we were okay. I told them we were figuring things out. What could I say? She volunteered her womb for her sister's baby without telling me, and now I'm stuck here for 8 months pretending I'm fine. No one wants that story. No one knows what to do with it. Cindy and Duke came around less, which was a small mercy. But when they did, it was awkward. Duke overly friendly, Cindy overly grateful, both of them tiptoeing around the tension like it wasn't their storm too. I couldn't look at them without feeling a surge of something dark. Not hate, exactly. Just disappointment. They were the beneficiaries of my silence, and they never once asked how I felt about it. Cameron kept trying to pull me in, left baby name books on the coffee table, suggested I feel the baby kick. I never touched her belly, never asked when the due date was. She once left a printout of the ultrasound on my desk like it was an olive branch. I put it in a drawer I never opened again. She tried to act like we were still us, that I'd come around, that once the baby was here, things would heal. But I wasn't waiting for healing. I was counting down. 8 months. 158 days left. Then 122. Then 91. I never hated her. Not really. But I started to forget what loving her felt like. That was worse. As her belly grew, so did her expectations, like the baby inside was a bridge she thought I'd eventually walk across. But it wasn't a bridge. It was a wall, and I wasn't going to climb it. I couldn't. She kept trying, though, tossing rope after rope over that wall, thinking I'd catch one. Do you want to come to the next ultrasound? They say the baby can hear voices now. Maybe you should talk to it? You'd be such a good dad, even if just for this little while. I didn't yell, didn't laugh, just shook my head and went back to whatever I was doing, cooking, working, reading the same page of a book 3 times without registering a word. I could see how badly she wanted me to crack, how she thought if she kept softening her approach, left a trail of emotional breadcrumbs, I'd follow them back to her. But I wasn't lost. I knew exactly where I was. I was in a house with a woman who had erased me from the biggest decision of our lives. That wasn't a path I could just wander back from. She cried more. That part surprised me. I thought she'd be euphoric, proud, maybe even smug. But she wasn't. Not always. There were nights I'd hear her in the bedroom, whispering on the phone to Cindy, her voice cracking as she said things like, "He's so cold. I don't recognize him anymore." I wanted to scream through the wall. "Because I'm not a prop in your story, Cameron." But I didn't. I just laid there, the ceiling fan whirring above me, counting its slow revolutions like they meant something. Sometimes she'd leave things around, little notes from the OBGYN, articles about the importance of male support during surrogacy, even sticky notes with doodled hearts. As if guilt could work where honesty failed. I'd find prenatal vitamins by my toothbrush, like she thought I'd suddenly feel fatherly by proximity. She even brought home a soft little blue onesie one day and left it folded on the arm of the couch, just out of reach. I picked it up, felt the fabric between my fingers for maybe 3 seconds, then folded it again and put it in the drawer with the ultrasound picture. Out of sight, out of mind. I wasn't playing a part in this. I was just enduring it. One Sunday, she sat across from me at the kitchen table, both hands on her belly, eyes wet but steady. "You really aren't going to be a part of this at all, are you?" I looked at her, really looked, and said the one thing I'd been holding on to like a life preserver. "No, because it wasn't my choice. So it's not my role." She didn't reply, just sat there, letting it land. It was the first time she didn't argue. After that, something shifted. She stopped trying to pull me in, at least publicly. No more baby talk. No more shared articles. But there were still glances, quiet, desperate glances like she was hoping I'd change my mind. I never did. Even the house started to change, little touches. She rearranged the guest room, added pastel curtains and a rocking chair. Said it was just to have a quiet place to rest. But I knew what it was. Her way of pretending this baby had a future here. I didn't say anything. I just started spending more time outside, cleaning the garage, walking longer routes through the neighborhood, nodding politely to neighbors who asked how the family was doing. I gave them smiles with no teeth. Then there was the night I came home late from work, not because of a meeting, but because I sat in the parking lot for an hour, staring at the steering wheel. I walked in, and there she was on the couch, watching a baby video on her laptop, her hands cradling her stomach like it was already born. She looked up at me, hopeful, like maybe tonight would be the night I'd sit beside her, hold her hand, pretend I was part of it. I nodded hello and walked straight to the kitchen. She followed. "Don't you care at all?" she asked, her voice breaking just enough to sound practiced. "About the baby? About me?" I turned slowly, met her eyes. "Cameron, you made a choice. You didn't just go ahead with this. You erased me from the process. And now you want me to pretend like I was here the whole time? That's not how this works." "I thought you'd come around," she whispered. "Then you don't know me at all," I said, and the quiet that followed felt final. That was the last real conversation we had during the pregnancy. After that, we just existed. Two people waiting for a due date neither of us wanted to talk about for very different reasons. She had her baby, and I had my silence. The night she gave birth, the house was quiet. Not in a peaceful way, but in that eerie, too-still way that feels like the silence before a storm. Cameron didn't wake me when her contractions started. She called Cindy. She called Duke. She didn't call me. I only found out when I walked into the kitchen that morning and saw the note taped to the fridge at the hospital. It's happening. That was it. No call, no text. Just those words in her round handwriting, like she was telling me the plumber had come. I didn't rush. Didn't throw on a jacket or fumble for keys. I sat down at the table, poured myself a cup of coffee, and stared out the window for a long time. The sun rose slow, painting the sidewalk in gold, and I thought about all the ways this could have gone differently. How this child could have been a symbol of love instead of a wedge driven deep into the space where a marriage used to live. I showed up at the hospital around noon. Cindy and Duke were already there, beaming, pacing, buzzing with anticipation like new parents do. Cameron was in recovery, groggy but glowing, her face flushed from labor, her arms empty. The baby, their baby, was in the nursery. I stood at the foot of her bed, hands in my pockets, not sure why I'd come except that some old part of me still thought it was the right thing to do. "Hey," she said, voice soft, eyes glassy. "It's a girl." I nodded. "Congratulations." She flinched a little, but said nothing else. Cindy came in a few minutes later, eyes wide with joy, phone in hand to show pictures. She talked fast, birth weights, time of delivery, skin-to-skin bonding, as if filling the air with fact could somehow make the awkwardness disappear. Duke followed, grinning, already making plans for the nursery, already talking about schedules and feedings like he hadn't vanished for the last few months. They didn't ask me to hold her. I didn't ask either. I stayed for maybe an hour, long enough to check the box, to say I'd been there. Then I left. What followed was chaos. Not the dramatic kind with screaming and slammed doors, but the slow unraveling of a plan that had looked perfect on paper. Duke started showing up less. Work, he said. Stress. The reality of fatherhood settling in heavier than expected. Cindy called Cameron constantly, asking for advice, for help, for reassurance. 2 weeks in, the baby got a rash. Cindy panicked and brought her back to our house, crying that she couldn't handle it. Cameron took the baby into her arms like it was the most natural thing in the world. She stayed that night, then the next. By the end of the week, there was a bassinet in our living room again, bottles in the sink, diapers in the trash, and Cameron pacing at 2 a.m. with a baby on her shoulder while I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft wails echo through the walls. "You were right," she said one night, standing in the doorway, the baby quiet at last in her arms. They weren't ready. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. She already knew what I was thinking. She'd handed her body and heart to a promise. And now that promise was unraveling thread by thread, in the form of late-night feedings and unanswered calls. And once again, she turned to me, not as her husband, not as her partner, but as the man who'd warned her. The man who now, she hoped, might save her from the mess she'd helped create. But I wasn't in the business of saving people who didn't want to listen. I stayed in my lane, silent and still. She'd made her bed, and now she was rocking someone else's child to sleep in it. After the baby came back into our house, nothing looked the same. Not the living room, with its soft glow of night lights and half-folded blankets on the couch. Not the kitchen, cluttered with formula cans and burp cloths. And not Cameron. She'd always moved through space with purpose, that clean, brisk certainty that made people think she had it all figured out. But now, she looked like a woman unspooling. Her eyes were darker, her voice quieter, her edges frayed from the constant care of something she'd never intended to keep. The irony was bitter. She'd made a choice that excluded me, and now she needed me to shoulder the weight of its fallout. She never said the words outright, but they were there in every sigh, every tired glance, every time she left the baby monitor just a little too close to my side of the bed. She was tired, overwhelmed, and Duke and Cindy, they were ghosts. Duke sent money now and then. Cindy texted with updates, apologies laced in emoji hearts. But the baby stayed. I didn't offer to help, not out of cruelty, but out of principle. I'd told her, more than once, that this wasn't my choice, and so it wasn't my responsibility. I wasn't the father. I wasn't the uncle. I was just the man who warned her and was ignored. That role doesn't come with diaper duty. Still, the pressure came. At first it was subtle, a request here and there. Can you warm this bottle while I get her down? Would you mind holding her just for a second? I declined each one with a quiet shake of the head. Not harsh, just firm. It escalated from there. Cameron began using guilt as currency. She won't stop crying, she said one night, pacing the hallway with red eyes and sagging shoulders. I haven't slept in 3 days. I'm sorry to hear that, I said and meant it. But I didn't stand up. You really don't care, do you? She snapped. You just want to sit there and watch me fall apart. No, I said evenly. I want to sit here and not be pulled into a situation I never agreed to. That's different. She slammed the nursery door that night. The next day, she cried at the kitchen table. Loud, gasping sobs over cold coffee and untouched toast. I sat across from her, waiting for the storm to pass. I didn't reach out. I didn't soften. I couldn't. If I bent now, it would mean she'd been right to leave me out. That all choices were forgivable if you cried long enough. Then came the phone calls. Her mother, Cindy. Even Duke had the audacity to leave a voicemail telling me family steps up in hard times. I deleted it before he finished the sentence. They call me selfish. Cold. Said I was punishing Cameron for something noble. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. Let them think what they wanted. None of them had been there the night she made the decision. None of them had seen how easily she erased me with a phrase. It's my body, my choice. Now was my turn, my choice, and I chose the distance. I went to work. I came home. I cooked for one. I kept to my side of the house. I let her handle what she volunteered for. And every time I heard a cry from the other room or saw her curled up in exhaustion on the couch, I reminded myself, not my child, not my crisis. I didn't hate her, but I wasn't going to save her. She hadn't asked if I wanted to be in this story. So I chose to be the man who watched it from the sidelines, arms crossed, heart intact. The walls started closing in around the time her mother showed up. Not for a visit, not the polite check-in with the kids kind. No, she came with an agenda. She walked through the front door like she still paid the mortgage, with a casserole in one hand and a judgment in the other. She hugged Cameron, eyed the bassinet, and then turned her gaze on me like I was the mold on her perfect family's foundation. We need to talk, she said as if I'd invited her. I didn't move from my place on the couch. I just raised an eyebrow and waited. You've made your point, she said. But this isn't just about you anymore. There's a baby in this house, a family in crisis. Are you really going to sit there and act like it doesn't affect you? I looked her dead in the eye and answered with the calm I perfected over the last few months. It's not my family. It's not my crisis. Cameron flinched. Her mother scoffed. And for a moment, the silence in that room was thicker than the walls. Then Cindy called. She sounded tired, desperate. Please, Edward. We didn't expect this. Duke is struggling. I don't know what to do. Maybe you should have thought of that before you handed your life to someone else, I said. Click. Duke texted a few days later. Something performative about how men should take care of what's under their roof. I deleted it. Then came the intervention attempt. I walked in one Saturday and found all of them in my living room. Cameron, her mother, Cindy, and Duke perched on my furniture like they had a right to the space. The baby was in a carrier by the coffee table. Her mother started talking first, of course. This isn't healthy, Edward, she said. For Cameron. For the child. You're being cold, unreasonable. And what about when Cameron made a decision that cut me out entirely? I asked. Was that healthy? She was helping her sister, Cindy chimed in, her voice barely above a whisper. We didn't know it would end like this. No, I said, you didn't care how it would end, as long as it started the way you wanted. Duke stood up. Come on, man. You can't just sit back and watch this fall apart. I'm not watching it fall apart, I said. I'm watching it land exactly where it was always going. Cameron didn't speak. She just looked at me, not with anger this time, but with a kind of hollow acceptance. Like she finally understood I wasn't bluffing. They left that day, quieter than they'd come. And for the first time in weeks, the house felt still again. They thought they could guilt me, shame me. They thought if they stood close enough and loud enough, they could force me to care about a story I was written out of from the start. But I wasn't the villain. I was just the man who said no and meant it. That was my power, and I held it with both hands. Time passed, as it always does, unevenly, sometimes cruelly. The baby stayed longer than anyone expected. Cindy and Duke drifted further into silence. And suddenly, the girl who was meant to be their miracle became a full-time presence in our home. Cameron stepped into the role of mother, not because she planned it, but because there was no one left willing to. I stayed in my lane. I didn't hold her. I didn't feed her. But I saw everything. The exhaustion in Cameron's face. The soft moments when she rocked the baby and hummed lullabies, her voice cracking on the high notes. The anger she tried to hide when Cindy stopped responding to her messages. And slowly, painfully, Cameron began to look at me differently. Like I was not just the man who resented her, but the only one left standing. She started small. Would you like some dinner? Or you don't have to stay in the guest room, you know. Then came the real overtures. A framed photo of us, pre-chaos, reappeared on the hallway shelf. My favorite coffee suddenly stocked again. One morning, she left a note with my breakfast. Thank you for staying. But staying isn't the same as returning. Then, one night, she sat beside me on the couch. Not close, but closer than usual. The baby was asleep. The house was still. I miss what we had, she said. I didn't respond. She waited, then continued. You were right. I made a decision that changed everything. But maybe now we can start again. For her. For the kids. There was the hook. Not for love. For the idea of family. For stability. She wanted to rewrite the story, to pretend the beginning didn't poison the ending. But I hadn't forgotten. I couldn't. Love isn't a leash you snap back when things get hard. It's a choice you protect. And she hadn't protected us. Not once. I'm here for the kids, I said slowly. Not for you. Her face didn't crumble. It just froze like someone hit pause on her hope. Then she nodded, stood up, and left the room. She didn't try again. Not like that. She must have realized that some bridges, once burned, don't just stop smoking. They turn to ash. And even if you sweep it up, the wind always remembers where it was. I wasn't cruel. I still made sure there was food in the house. I kept the bills paid. I helped with the twins when needed, the ones that were actually mine. But with her, there was no going back. She tried to come home again, but she was already just a guest. It didn't happen overnight. Custody battles never do. They creep forward, inch by inch, wrapped in court filings and quiet bitterness. But eventually, the day came, the one where a stranger in a robe would decide what kind of father I was. What kind of man? Cameron had filed for shared custody of our twins a few months after the baby settled into our home. I expected it. She was trying to reclaim something, maybe a sense of power, maybe just the illusion of normal. But I wasn't about to hand over my children to someone who'd made so many decisions based on impulse and guilt. The hearing was quiet. No fireworks. Just statements, documents, timelines. My lawyer walked the judge through the months of Cameron's emotional instability. The fact that she'd taken on a surrogacy without informing her husband. The collapse of her support system. He didn't exaggerate. He didn't need to. Cameron's lawyer tried to paint her as misunderstood, overburdened, still healing. But even Cameron looked tired of the performance. There was no fire in her eyes that day, just fatigue, like she already knew how it would end. I sat with my back straight, hands folded. I wasn't angry. I wasn't smug. I was just present, consistent. And when the judge looked at me, really looked, I think he saw it too. Stability. He ruled in my favor. Full custody. Sole decision-making authority. Cameron would get visitation rights, structured and supervised at first. She didn't argue. She just nodded. And for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. When we stepped out of the courtroom, she caught up to me in the hallway. "You win," she said. "No," I replied. "The kids do." I didn't say it with spite, just truth. They were the only ones who hadn't asked for any of this. And now, finally, they'd have a chance at stability, without the noise, without the chaos. At home, I cleaned out the extra room, turned it into a proper study, packed away the last of the baby gear. The nursery Cameron had set up for her sister's child was folded down, piece by piece, until it was just another quiet corner. Life began to settle into a new rhythm. School drop-offs, evening dinners, bedtime stories. Just me and the twins. No interventions. No crying behind closed doors. Just space to breathe. And in that silence, I started to feel like myself again. Not the man Cameron tried to pull back. Not the ghost of her mistake. Just Edward, the father who stayed. The one who stood his ground. The one who never stopped choosing them. It's strange, the things you start to notice when the noise fades. The way the floorboards creak differently depending on the season. The soft sigh your child makes when they fall asleep on the couch, safe and full. The quiet satisfaction of a house that holds no tension, no unsaid words, no unexpected storms. That's what life became. Not easy, but real. And finally mine. The twins adapted faster than I expected. Kids are resilient like that. We made new routines. Movie nights with popcorn, Saturday mornings at the park, lazy Sunday breakfasts with too much syrup. They asked fewer questions than I feared. I answered what I could with honesty, never venom. Cameron became a visitor, scheduled and polite. And to her credit, she never made it harder than it had to be. Maybe she finally understood that love can't be forced into places it wasn't invited. The baby, her niece, eventually went back to Cindy. Or maybe Cindy came back for her. It was quiet, uneventful. A brief, tense visit and then a departure. No one cried. No one celebrated. Just a quiet closing of a door that should have never opened that way to begin with. I stopped thinking about revenge. That part of me, the one that wanted her to suffer as I had, it dissolved. Not out of forgiveness, but because it took too much energy to keep feeding something so hollow. I didn't need her to hurt to feel whole. I just needed her gone. And now she was... I spent time with the kids. I found joy in the ordinary. A new book, an old song on the radio. I even started painting again, something I hadn't touched since college. The brush felt unfamiliar at first. Then it felt like home. I painted mostly landscapes, wide open skies, broken fences, a road that disappeared into a horizon I hadn't reached yet. There was something healing about it, quiet like prayer. The house, once tense and echoing with things unspoken, began to breathe again. I opened the windows more, let the light in. I moved furniture, took down old photos, hung new ones, not to erase the past, but to make room for the future. People asked if I'd ever trust again, if I'd open my heart to someone new. I told them the truth. I don't know. Trust isn't a switch. It's a garden. And right now, I'm just clearing the weeds. The soil's still good. It just needs time. Sometimes late at night, I sit on the back porch with a cup of tea, listening to the quiet hum of the world settling in. The kids asleep upstairs. The dog, a recent addition, snoring at my feet. There's no drama, no unanswered questions, Just the comfort of knowing I survived something meant to break me. I'm not bitter. I'm just wiser. I look in the mirror and I see a man who didn't fold, who stood his ground when everyone told him to bend, who chose dignity over chaos, silence over performance, substance over appearance. I'm not perfect. I never claimed to be, but I'm here, and I'm free. And most of all, I'm finally home.